ExamPrep.School. Rhode Island Casualty Insurance Producer Exam. Exam code INSRI-CAS4 or OPCas04. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Insurance terms and related concepts. Policy provisions. RI laws rules common to property and casualty. RI laws rules pertinent to casualty only. Types of policies, bonds, and related terms. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Under coverage A of a commercial general liability policy, which of the following must be present to trigger coverage for bodily injury? A. An intentional wrongful act causing harm during the policy period. B. Bodily injury resulting from an accidental event during the policy period. C. A claim first reported to the insurer within the policy period. D. Liability for bodily injury without regard to when the injury occurs. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is bodily injury resulting from an accidental event during the policy period, because coverage A operates on an occurrence basis, requiring an accidental event within the policy period to trigger coverage. Reason A is not correct. Intentional acts are excluded under coverage A, which covers only accidental injuries. Reason C is not correct. Reporting within the policy period is a feature of claims-made triggers, not occurrence-based coverage. Reason D is not correct. Coverage A requires the injury to occur during the policy period, not regardless of timing. Question 2. Under coverage A of a commercial general liability policy, property damage coverage is triggered by which of the following? A. Loss of use of tangible property without accompanying physical damage. B. Physical injury to tangible property during the policy period. C. Fines or penalties for property damage caused by the insured. D. Contractual liability for property damage under a written agreement. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is physical injury to tangible property during the policy period, because coverage A requires an occurrence of accidental physical damage to property to trigger coverage. Reason A is not correct. Loss of use alone is not considered property damage unless there is physical harm to the property. Reason C is not correct. Fines or penalties are not part of property damage coverage and are typically excluded. Reason D is not correct. Contractual liability is only covered if specified, but coverage still requires accidental physical damage to tangible property. Question 3. Which of the following offenses would trigger coverage B under a commercial general liability policy for personal and advertising injury? A. Negligent acts that result in bodily harm. B. Publication of material that slanders or libels a third party. C. Intentional property damage by the insured. D. Failure to perform services according to contract. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is publication of material that slanders or libels a third party, because coverage B responds to personal and advertising injury offenses, such as defamation, rather than bodily injury or property damage. Reason A is not correct. Bodily harm is covered under coverage A, not personal and advertising injury. Reason C is not correct. Property damage falls under coverage A, not coverage B. Reason D is not correct. Breach of contract is excluded and not classified as a personal or advertising injury offense. Question 4. Based on the scenario above, what is the primary purpose of coverage C? Medical payments under a commercial general liability policy. A. Compensate claimants for legal liability arising from bodily injury. B. Defend and indemnify insureds against lawsuits alleging bodily injury. C. Provide immediate payment of small medical expenses for injured third parties without establishing legal liability. D. Cover property damage caused by the insured's operations. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that medical payments coverage is designed to promptly pay reasonable medical bills for third party injuries without determining fault. Reason A is not correct. Compensating for legal liability requires establishing fault, which medical payments does not do. Reason B is not correct. Defense and indemnity relate to liability coverage, not the no-fault medical payments provision. Reason D is not correct. Property damage is excluded from medical payments, which only covers bodily injuries. Question 5. In the situation above, which statement correctly describes the timing of an occurrence under an occurrence form CGL policy? A. Coverage is limited to injuries first filed as claims within the policy term. B. Only injuries discovered during the policy period are covered, even if they happened earlier. C. Claims must be reported while the policy is enforced to qualify for coverage. D. Coverage applies to bodily injury events that take place during the policy period, regardless of when a claim is reported. The correct answer is D. The correct timing rule is that an occurrence is an event that takes place during the policy period, and coverage applies even if the claim is made later. Reason A is not correct. Occurrence coverage does not require claims to be filed in the policy period. Reason B is not correct. Coverage triggers on when the injury event occurs, not on when it is discovered. Reason C is not correct. That requirement describes a claims-made form, not an occurrence form. Question 6. Considering the facts above, which explanation best distinguishes a claims-made form from an occurrence form of CGL coverage? A. Occurrence coverage requires both the injury and claim reporting within the policy term. B. Claims-made coverage pays only defense costs, not indemnity. C. Coverage applies only if the claim is first made during the policy period, irrespective of when the injury occurred. D. Claims-made form extends coverage for products exposure incidents only. The correct answer is C. Claims-made coverage triggers on the date a claim is reported during the policy period, regardless of when the injury occurred. Reason A is not correct. Occurrence coverage requires injury during the period, but claim reporting time is irrelevant. Reason B is not correct. Claims-made policies cover both defense and indemnity, not defense only. Reason D is not correct. Claims-made forms apply to all covered liability, not just products exposures. Question 7. Given this scenario, which option best describes the product's completed operations hazard exposure? A. Liabilities arising from the sale of products after they leave the insured's hands. B. Exposure for bodily injury occurring on the insured's premises. C. Hazards related to work operations performed away from the insured's premises after completion. D. Liabilities from ownership of motor vehicles. The correct answer is C. Products completed operations hazard covers liabilities from operations performed away from the insured's premises after the work is finished. Reason A is not correct. That describes product liability rather than completed operations hazards. Reason B is not correct. Premises exposure applies on insured's location, not at customer sites post-completion. Reason D is not correct. Vehicle liabilities are excluded from CGL completed operations coverage. Question 8. In light of the details above, which statement best characterizes the premises and operations exposure? A. Claims for defective products sold and shipped by the insured. B. Liabilities arising from the insured's business activities at its premises or ongoing operations elsewhere. C. Debts owed by the insured to suppliers during construction. D. Injuries to employees covered by workers' compensation. The correct answer is B. Premises and operations exposure includes bodily injury or property damage from the insured's activities on its premises or at job sites during operations. Reason A is not correct. Defective products exposures fall under products liability, not premises and operations. Reason C is not correct. Debts to suppliers are financial obligations, not liability exposures. Reason D is not correct. Employee injuries are covered under workers' compensation, not CGL premises and operations. Question 9. Under a personal auto policy Part A, with split limits of $50,000, $100,000, what is the maximum amount payable for bodily injury to any one person? A. $50,000. B. $100,000. C. $150,000. D. $25,000. The correct answer is A. The first number in a split limit PAP Part A liability limit is the maximum payable for bodily injury to any one person. Reason B is not correct. That amount is the per accident bodily injury limit, not the per person limit. Reason C is not correct. That sum combines both limits and is not used in split limit structure. Reason D is not correct. That figure is a common property damage limit, not a bodily injury limit. Question 10. Under a split limit of $100,000, $300,000, $50,000 in a personal auto policy Part A, what does the $50,000 limit apply to? A. Property damage liability per accident. B. Bodily injury liability per person. C. Total bodily injury liability per accident. D. Personal injury protection. The correct answer is A. In split limit PAP Part A, the third figure is the maximum payable for property damage liability per accident. Reason B is not correct. That describes the first figure, which is per person bodily injury liability. Reason C is not correct. That describes the second figure, which is per accident bodily injury liability. Reason D is not correct. Personal injury protection is not covered under Part A liability split limits. Question 11. Under Part B of a standard personal auto policy, medical payments coverage must be for expenses incurred within how many years from the date of the accident? A. 1 year. B. 3 years. C. 2 years. D. 5 years. The correct answer is B. Part B medical payments under a PAP must be for medical expenses incurred within 3 years of the accident date. Reason A is not correct. That period is too short. The standard allows up to 3 years. Reason C is not correct. That period understates the allowable time frame under the policy form. Reason D is not correct. That period exceeds the maximum duration specified by the standard form. Question 12. After a rear-end collision, Emma, who carries PAP Part C uninsured motorist coverage but not collision coverage, incurs significant medical bills and lost wages. The at-fault driver was uninsured. Which losses will Emma's Part C coverage reimburse? A. Medical expenses and lost wages for bodily injury. B. Vehicle repair cost. C. Both bodily injury and vehicle damage. D. Property damage liability to others. The correct answer is A. This option is correct because Part C uninsured motorist coverage applies only to bodily injury medical expenses and wage loss, not to property or vehicle damage. Reason B is not correct. Coverage for vehicle repair costs is provided by collision or comprehensive, not uninsured motorist. Reason C is not correct. Uninsured motorist does not cover property or vehicle damage, only bodily injury. Reason D is not correct. Property damage liability protects others, not the insured's own bodily injuries. Question 13. Mark, insured under PAP Part C, underinsured motorist coverage of 100 divided by 300, is injured by a driver with liability limits of 25 divided by 50. After the tortfeasor's insurer pays Mark $25,000, how much can Mark claim under his UIM coverage? A. $75,000. B. $50,000. C. $25,000. D. $100,000. The correct answer is A. This option is correct because underinsured motorist coverage pays the difference between the insured's UIM limit and the tortfeasor's liability payment. Here, $100,000 minus $25,000 equals $75,000. Reason B is not correct. That amount reflects half the UIM limit, not the difference after liability payment. Reason C is not correct. That equals only the tortfeasor's payment, not the difference up to the UIM limit. Reason D is not correct. That equals the full UIM limit without subtracting the tortfeasor's payment. Question 14. While driving on an icy road, Carla loses control and skids into a guardrail, causing extensive front-end damage. Under her PAP Part D collision coverage, how is this loss classified? A. Collision loss. B. Other than collision loss. C. Uninsured motorist loss. D. Liability loss. The correct answer is A. This option is correct because collision coverage applies when your vehicle hits or is hit by another object or overturns as when skidding into a guardrail. Reason B is not correct. Other than collision covers perils like theft or fire, not impact with a guardrail. Reason C is not correct. Uninsured motorist covers bodily injury, not physical damage. Reason D is not correct. Liability covers damage to others, not the insured's own vehicle. Question 15. During a hailstorm, Luis's parked car is dented across the hood and roof. His PAP Part D includes other than collision coverage. Which coverage responds to this damage? A. Liability coverage. B. Collision coverage. C. Uninsured motorist coverage. D. Comprehensive, other than collision coverage. The correct answer is D. This option is correct because hail damage while the car is parked is an other than collision peril, covered by comprehensive physical damage. Reason A is not correct. Liability covers third-party injuries or property damage you cause, not your own hail damage. Reason B is not correct. Collision applies to impact with objects or overturn, not weather perils. Reason C is not correct. Uninsured motorist covers bodily injury from uninsured drivers, not physical damage. Question 16. Which of the following best describes the workers' compensation exclusive remedy doctrine? A. Prevents an injured employee from alleging employer negligence to obtain tort damages. B. Limits an injured employee to statutorily mandated compensation benefits only. C. Forbids an employer from asserting contributory negligence against compensation claims. D. Mandates employer to secure third-party indemnity before insurer payment. The correct answer is B. The exclusive remedy doctrine confines recovery for workplace injuries to statutory benefits, barring common law tort suits against employers. Reason A is not correct. An injured employee may still allege employer negligence but must pursue compensation benefits rather than a tort action. Reason C is not correct. Employers can assert contributory negligence defenses in compensation proceedings, but the doctrine itself limits tort actions. Reason D is not correct. There is no requirement for employers to obtain third-party indemnity as a condition for insurer payment under the exclusive remedy doctrine. Question 17. Under most workers' compensation statutes, which worker classification is generally excluded from an employer's compulsory coverage requirement? A. A statutory employee supervised directly by the employer. B. A seasonal agricultural worker hired through a labor contractor. C. An independent contractor furnishing own tools and controlling work methods. D. A corporate executive officer covered by employer's compensation election. The correct answer is C. Independent contractors are not considered employees under workers' compensation laws because they supply their own tools and control work methods, excluding them from mandatory coverage. Reason A is not correct. A statutory employee is treated as an employee for coverage purposes despite direct supervision. Reason B is not correct. Seasonal agricultural workers hired through labor contractors are typically employees under the statute. Reason D is not correct. Corporate executives become covered employees when the employer elects to include them in the policy. Question 18. A manufacturing firm discontinued a hazardous welding operation 45 days after its workers' compensation policy became effective. The employer notified its insurer of the change and requested a premium adjustment. Under workers' compensation employer subjectivity rules, how will the insurer process the premium for the discontinued operation? A. Adjust premium upon final audit at policy expiration and refund any overpayment. B. Adjust premium immediately and refund the overpayment within 30 days. C. Decline any premium refund for classification changes reported after the notice period. D. Defer any premium adjustment until the next policy period without a current year audit. The correct answer is A. This option is correct because classification changes reported after the 30-day notice period are reconciled at the end of policy audit, when any overpayment is returned. Reason B is not correct. Immediate adjustments are not permitted under subjectivity rules until the final audit occurs. Reason C is not correct. Refunds are not declined but deferred until the audit rather than outright denied. Reason D is not correct. Adjustments apply to the current policy at audit, not postponed to a later policy period. Question 19. A delivery driver finishing a scheduled route made an unscheduled 20-minute personal stop at a friend's house. While there, the driver slipped and injured a wrist. Under the concept of course and scope of employment, is this injury compensable? A. The injury is compensable under course and scope due to minor personal deviations generally allowed. B. The injury remains compensable because returning to the employer's premises provided an implied business benefit. C. The injury is not compensable because the worker's personal detour was substantial and outside employment duties. D. Compensability is denied because injuries during personal errands are always excluded from coverage. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because a substantial personal detour for non-work purposes falls outside the course and scope of employment and is not compensable. Reason A is not correct. The deviation here is substantial, not a minor incidental stop allowed under the rule. Reason B is not correct. An implied benefit from returning to premises does not override the primarily personal nature of the detour. Reason D is not correct. Injuries during errands can be compensable if the detour is incidental, so the exclusion is too broad. Question 20. A chemical plant operator developed chronic respiratory fibrosis several months after repeated exposure to workplace solvents. Under the concept of occupational disease, how is this condition treated for workers' compensation purposes? A. Coverage requires a specific accident, so chronic exposure diseases are excluded from workers' compensation. B. Disease claims are limited to injuries with symptoms appearing within the policy term, so this is excluded. C. This qualifies as an occupational disease since it resulted from prolonged workplace exposure without a discrete event. D. Only infectious or acute conditions qualify as occupational diseases, excluding chronic respiratory disorders. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because occupational diseases include harmful conditions arising from prolonged employment exposures, even without a single identifiable accident. Reason A is not correct. Occupational diseases do not require a specific accident, so chronic conditions are included. Reason B is not correct. There is no requirement that symptoms manifest within the policy term for disease coverage. Reason D is not correct. Coverage is not limited to infectious or acute conditions. Chronic disorders are included. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.